And in this case, like we're not talking about books that are being marketed to children. We're talking
No.
about books like, for example, I have explicit sex scenes in my books, and I
Mm.
sell them on various retailers, including a direct storefront via PayHip, which collects payment from Stripe or PayPal. And so if Stripe or PayPal decide to say, oh, we have this clause where nothing that includes depictions of nudity will be sold, then people would not be able to purchase my books.
I've got bad news for you. Catherine, I've got bad news for you. I also, write adult books, meaning like for an adult audience, and some of these books do contain sex scenes as well. I use these payment processors for things like, my paid newsletter or Patreon, things like that. And according to Stripe's restricted business like terms of service, they say under adult content and services that they do not allow, this is a quote, I'm reading from their website, pornography and other mature audience content, including literature designed for the purpose of sexual gratification. So that is romance novels. Now, a lot of people will say, well, they're not going to enforce that for romance novels. They're not going to go after everyone trying to buy an ebook of Twilight or whatever, right? Like they're just not going to do that. That's not feasible. And, that is correct currently. What it does mean is that because of this broad definition that these companies are using to define their terms of service, they can then point to almost any product, any book that they, for whatever reason, politically or whatever, feel is makes a good target and say, well, actually, because of this, falling under this incredibly broad definition that we have, you're in violation of our terms and service. And that means they can legally withhold the money that you have earned and not give it to you. So they can steal all the money that you have gotten from your little independent business, your Patreon, your newsletter, your, indie bookstore, and they can retain all that money and say like, well, we can't give it to you because that's actually illegal according to our terms of service. So yeah, it's scary and frustrating when the sort of big shift at these at websites like itch.io happened over this summer. I had been using that website to look for and buy lots of new romance novels that featured trans characters. This is where the bulk of romance is happening for my community. We're not making a ton of inroads in traditional publishing, unfortunately, still. We're getting better at it, but it's still not where it could be. So I try and make a point of supporting and reading indie authors in the space. And when this judgment was handed down very quickly and without any warning, many of these creators, their products were just simply removed from the website. And the money that they had earned that was supposed to be paid out to them, in regular installments was in some cases withheld. And they were told, well, now that you are violating our brand new terms of service that we have just updated without any warning, we won't be, giving you this money. It's not yours anymore. And it's very frustrating to see. I mean, as creatives, we get kicked around a lot financially in a lot of other ways, but this is just like salt in the wound for a lot of these folks. And it's scary to consider how insidious it is to have all these hidden traps that will only trigger if and when someone steps out of line, for example.
Yes. And just to clarify for the listeners who might not have been following along this summer, and I'm not sure that I've found an article that has laid it out for me, but my understanding of what happened was there was a small group of consumers who were complaining to like MasterCard and Visa that like pornographic materials were being sold. And so MasterCard or Visa put the pressure on itch.io to clean up their act, so to speak, or to put in these new policies.
Yeah, correct. And a lot of, again, because it affected the indie video game industry so, badly, a lot of video game journalists have been covering this very well. If anyone wants to go look at Polygon has a great rundown of it. Thegamer.com has a great, very simple sort of here is the order of operations in which they happened. And yes, you're absolutely right. But it actually wasn't just a random group of consumers. It was a very small Australian political faction called Collective Shout, who say that they are an anti-pornography feminist group, but what they actually had been in the past is an anti-abortion group. They no longer needed to harangue American businesses about their anti-abortion stances because we lost the Roe v. Wade protections in the last few years. So they pivoted to this anti-pornography stance. And they were the ones who approached Visa and MasterCard. And again, a very small, very, I would say, fringe group that isn't even based in this country, that doesn't represent any consumer in America. These are people that Visa and MasterCard could have, in my opinion, very easily ignored if they had wanted
Yeah.
to. They do not want to. They want to keep a tight rein on who is allowed to use their services and what products are able to enjoy the privilege of being processed by this credit card, which is wild. Like, my credit card should not be able to tell me what I'm allowed to buy and not buy.
Right.
I'm supposed to be the customer here. So it's really wild to me. And I hope that people, just pay a little bit of attention and get loud when stuff like this happens. I know a lot of romance readers think, well, it doesn't really affect me. I don't really read those kinds of books, or, all the books that I read are pretty tame. But like, these are the sorts of things that, like, if they wanted to, they could very easily all of a sudden flip a switch and say, like, actually, you're not allowed to buy or sell romance novels under this scheme. And then, stores will stop carrying them, unfortunately.